Welcome to A View from the Summit, where we explore the unique relationships between animals and humans, whether it's an Olympic partner or couch buddy, a working companion or unique pet, a world champion or someone you think the world of. Join us for a look at animals in our lives. Brought to you by Summit Animal Health. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of The View from the Summit. You know, not too long ago, I had an experience where I really met a dragon lady. No, a real dragon lady. And you're going to get to meet her in a minute. But before that, I get to introduce my co-host, Robin Benson, or as we all know her, the Lady of the Prairie, way up there north. She is a woman. She rides a horse. She does computers. She's an entrepreneur. She's a world-renowned trainer. She juggles. Guys, what's going on? She raises goats too. What's going on at the ranch today?
Oh, Steve, thank you. It's always fun to be here, and we never know what excitement is going to be happening. It's a beautiful day in March in Northwest Minnesota. My husband and daughter and I have beef cattle we raise with horses. My daughter has her goat project. We love them. They're hilarious. Chickens. It's kind of a zoo. We homeschool and we love animals. So every day, our day is filled with animals. And if you have animals or have known animals, you know there's a level of unpredictability. So we work on being flexible and we work on, going with the flow, but still get a lot of things done. And it's a really fun life. And that's why we have the show, right? Because animals have touched our lives in ways that we can't even express, but we try to share the beauty of all of these magnificent relationships. We come across some of the coolest stories and ways that people are impacting a lot of other people by sharing their heart and finding a unique way to do it with animals. And so I can't wait for today's episode. It's going to be a blast. I used to be a school teacher myself. Oh, I spilled a little bit, but Steve, a little
How dare you?
I know.
So I was visiting a friend that I hadn't seen for literally decades, and I was introduced to this young lady, and we it was like, two ships passing in the night. The only reason I remembered her was she asked if I wanted to meet her companion, and from her purse pulled out this animal with a beard and a long tail. And Brookli Pollock, welcome to the program. I'm going to let you finish the rest of that story. Who did I meet that night?
You met Ruby. This is Ruby. He's 4 years old. He is a bearded dragon, and he goes to school with me every day.
So,
I'm a oh,
no, no, no,
I'm a
no.
counselor at an elementary school in Webb City, and we use Ruby kind of as like a pseudo therapy animal. He gets to interact with the kids. He goes to recess. We do one-on-one stuff. We do groups, classroom lessons. He's involved in almost every aspect of my day.
How incredible.
It's
I,
so
I,
cool.
I got to hold Ruby, and I remember how cool Ruby is. So, how did you come up with the idea? I mean, I've heard of therapy dogs in schools, and things like that, but a bearded dragon, this is a new one for me.
I used to be at a middle school in Joplin, and in our middle school, there was three, four different science teachers that had dragons, and one was just down the hall from my office. And at first, I'll be honest, I was a little frightened of her dragon, Spike. But as I got to know Spike and got to know his personality, him and I started hanging out some in my office. And I saw how kids really responded to him and how he was a great icebreaker if kids were not wanting to talk. Just a lot of different uses for him. I used him in some pretty high stress situations. Kids fighting, parents not wanting to come in the building, not wanting to come to school. So I would say hey, why don't we go and see the dragon? And we'll feed him breakfast, we'll calm down, we'll get our day started good. And I told my principal, I said, I would feel awful if something happened to Cheryl's dragon. I really feel like I should have my own. So that way, if, you know, heaven forbid something terrible happened, it would be mine and it would be my responsibility. And, I wouldn't be putting someone else's animal in a situation that maybe they don't want them in. And he said, absolutely, go get one. So there was a reptile show a couple of weeks later. I got him on a Saturday and he went to school with me on Monday. He was about 5 weeks old at that time. So he
Wow.
was,
Wow.
Little bitty. So tell me, Brookli, have I don't know how to ask this, but like this, have you really formed a bond with this animal? A
there's a lot of mixed thoughts about whether a reptile can really bond with a person. But honestly, I do feel like me and Ruby have a bond when he's with a teacher in a classroom because he doesn't always have to be with me. If a teacher wants to take him for carpet time, they can come get him if I'm doing something else. And they say that if he hears my voice and I'm talking in the hallway, he'll start to turn his head and he'll start looking. And so they go, I think he recognizes your voice and he's just looking to see where you are.
How cool. How cool. So how did the kids react? I mean, when you came in, because he's pretty good size now. What
Yeah, he's about 22 inches long.
yeah.
Um, the kids love him. I've I've maybe had one kid that was kind of like, oh, I don't
Mhm.
know. But the majority of the kids, like they want to see him, they want to pet him, they want to know how he's doing, they want to know what he did over the weekend. He's really great for like hygiene lessons and talking about being clean. Ruby takes a bath. It's really important that you take a bath. Brushing teeth. Ruby has some stuff I got from the vet. We put it on a Q-tip, wipe his mouth out. So we're brushing Ruby's teeth. It's really important that you brush your teeth every day, just for different things like that, as
That's
well as like just being there to be held and loved.
So
yeah.
how does Ruby respond? I mean, animals, are all different personalities, but how does Ruby respond to having a lot of kids around him, touch him, share him? I mean, is he okay with being passed around, or do you notice him getting anxious if there's too many kids, or does he look for attention on the weekends like, "Hey, I'm being ignored here. Where's my kids?"
The first lesson that I do at the beginning of the school year is the kids meet me and they meet Ruby. And we talk about how we keep ourselves safe at school. And we talk about fire drills, tornado drills, that kind of stuff. And then we also talk about Ruby safety. If these things are on the floor, staples, tacks, paper clips, little beads, maybe that they were doing a project with in class, if Ruby eats those things, he'll die. And so it's really important that we keep our school community clean and we keep the floors cleaned up so that way Ruby can be in our school and be safe. And the kids really they take that to heart. I'll have kids come in my office with a handful of staples. Look what I found on the floor in the hallway. And I'm like, oh gosh, thank you for picking those up. I'm so glad we're keeping Ruby safe and keeping our school clean.
That is awesome.
It's
Yeah.
so cool. And how old are the kids? You said elementary, but you work with the whole elementary school or kind of on average? What are the ages?
I'm at a third grade building. So our kids are 8, 9 years old.
Sure. I have a third grader. I mean, I homeschool. My daughter's 3, so I'm totally, yeah, that's so cool. And how many kids at a time? Like, do they learn how to share? Do they learn, those kind of things? Do they?
We teach a lot about animal safety. You never touch someone's animal unless you've asked them if you can pet them. Just because one person is petting something doesn't mean you can do that too, because sometimes an animal's fine with one person petting them, but not two people. So you always need to ask someone before you touch their animal. And there are working animals too that you can't touch. They're not pets. They actually have a job that they're doing. So we talk a lot about that. Typically, bearded dragons are they like quiet, not a lot of activity. Ruby, wherever the noise is, that's where he wants to be. During
Wow.
lunchtime, he will run out of my office down to the hallway and he'll look both ways. And then he'll just run straight for the cafeteria. Wherever the kids are, that's where he wants to be. During PE, he's playing loud music. He loves PE. He loves going in the gym. I think when he runs on the floor, the kids laugh and he runs.
That is so cool because like you say, bearded dragons are usually like, oh, just leave me alone, and so are all the other dragons that you came in contact with from the other teachers, were they social like Ruby, or is he unique in this way?
They all have different personalities. I did work with one that preferred to not be held. You could touch her and that was okay, but she really didn't like to be held. Um, I really think it's just how you raise them, how much you interact with them. And like Ruby, he's never known any different.
Mhm.
He was so little when I got him that, he's always been in school. I mean, I'm sure for as far as he can remember.
So what does he do on the weekends or summer vacation when it's quiet and it's in your house? Do you do stuff on like extra stuff with him so he gets some extra stimulation?
Yes, they're called bearded dragons because their beard underneath their chin will turn black if they are upset, if they're sick, if they're hurt. And the only time his beard is ever black is when he's in his terrarium and he's alone. He does not like to be alone. He wants to be held. He wants to be petted. You take him out, and it's about 30 seconds, and his little beard's going away, and he's getting happy again. Summer
So
break is very difficult for him. I try to take him, we go outside. I have friends that have kids that we go and visit. We do a lot of different things in the summertime. My mom has a daycare. We'll go see my mom and visit the daycare kids.
wow,
That's
pretty
that's cool.
cool.
But I have a problem here. You've got a nice macho male bearded dragon, and you're calling him Ruby. Now I got to stand up for the guy and say, you're not treating this man right. What's with the name?
Well, Ruby was, again, he was very small when I got him. And the that I bought from was a breeder, and she said, I know by just looking at it, she goes, it's a female. And I was like, oh, okay. So we went to school. We had a competition where homerooms could uh like submit a name. Then we narrowed the name down to five. We had some of our community members come in and vote. Then they picked the name. Ruby was the name that was selected. A couple weeks later, me and him went to the vet for his checkup. And the vet goes, I see on your on the chart you listed this as a female. And I said, yeah, that's what the breeder told me when I bought him. And he goes, oh, well, it's a boy. And I said, oh, okay, that's fine. And so Ruby, he already had an established name. He had a Facebook page. And I felt like since we named him in a competition at that point, we couldn't change it. So
Well,
we just kept the
what was
name.
it? Johnny Cash had that song, "A Boy Named Sue." This is
Right,
a dragon named Ruby.
right.
So emotionally, do the kids connect? Can you tell us a story of where Ruby really made a difference for a young student, a young child?
Um, yeah, we had a student that did not like coming to school. He'd been through a lot in his life, kind of in and out of the foster care system. And one morning, grandma was trying to get him into the building, and he was being pretty aggressive. Our SRO got involved. He was punching him. And I said, do you want to come to my office with me and feed Ruby breakfast? And he looked at everybody and then he walked over and I said, okay, I said, put Ruby on your shoulder. We walked down the hall together. And from that day on, I don't remember any instances where he didn't want to come to school. He'd pop in my office and say hi to Ruby in the morning. And so I feel like that was beneficial to the grandma that he was living with. It made a better impact on him. He was ready to come to school, wanted to come to school.
Wow.
I, it sounds to me like every school ought to have a dragon. This is really amazing.
Yeah, I got tears on that one. Just knowing what kids can go through, and how the gesture and the connection with you. So when you work with kids like that, what have you noticed about their ability to connect with people through the dragon, like using Ruby as a catalyst, basically, to help kids feel more comfortable or learn how to communicate or overcome some things with people, because people can be scary, but dragons, they can be scary too, I guess, but not Ruby.
Um, Part of my job, like we do have to report child abuse and neglect. When we make a report, they usually send out an investigator from Children's Division. Sometimes there's one investigator there, sometimes there's two, sometimes a police officer sits in on the interview, sometimes my principal. There can be quite a few people in the room. And the investigators, police officer, the student maybe doesn't know them and is uncomfortable in front of strangers. I think a lot of kids relate police officers with trouble. So we try to always tell them, you're not in trouble. They're here to ask you some questions. If they're hesitant, I'll say, why don't you get Ruby out? We'll talk about Ruby for a little bit. And the investigator's usually like, oh, that's so cool. And then they ask questions about Ruby, and the student gets to tell them, about what he does and different things that he likes. And then usually they'll say something like, well, now that I've asked you a lot of questions about Ruby, can I ask you some questions about yourself? And it's just kind of that icebreaker to make them feel more comfortable. Now we have something that we can relate to. I got to tell him something that I knew about that he didn't know.
That's amazing. That's huge. Given the number of kids out there, it's sad, but the number of kids
Mhm.
that have to deal with so many difficult things at a young age, and having you and Ruby, because it's not just Ruby, it's you. Like, you have created this opportunity for these kids, right? So share some stories that inspire you to keep going, because I'm sure as a teacher, as a counselor, you have hard days too, right? So
Right. Ruby really supports the entire school. I know one day I went in my office, and instead of having like typical school chairs, I have patio furniture in my office. And she was sitting in the chair and she was crying and just holding Ruby. She goes, sorry, I just needed a Ruby minute. Um, Her sister was having a baby and there was some complications, and she was in class and was missing calls, and she didn't feel like she was getting, like, I want to know what's happening right now, but I can't know because they're still trying to figure out what's going on. She goes, sorry, I just needed to come down and hug him and love him. And I'm like, that's fine. I said, you can come get Ruby anytime you want. So he really is like a good support for students and for the staff, because like we have hard days at school, but also we have personal lives too, that things are going on. And we have worries outside of our job as well that are sometimes hard to curb when we are at work. So Ruby's great, during their plan time, if they want to come down, just hold him, relax. And then it's more of like okay, now I'm better. I feel, just touching the animal, and loving them.
that's incredible. Yeah.
Yes,
And so he's almost like a school mascot, right? Like he's
Right.
everybody in the school knows him. Does he walk around loose or do you have him on a leash or do you carry him?
At recess, he has to be on a leash because we have a very large playground. And I'm afraid, he could take off running, and they are very fast runners. One of the kids told me they read in the Bearded Dragon book that they can run up to 9 miles an hour.
Wow.
So I never want to have him in a situation outside where I could lose him. But inside the building, I always know where he is. Like if I'm in my office with a kid, or just working, I'll take him out, let him be on the floor. He'll run around.
that's funny. Can you tell us a story uh, uh, of an interaction between the dragon and a student that really touched you, that that maybe moved you to
Yeah, man, I've had so many different situations with kids. Um,
tell two?
I I had a girl that was going to the dentist. I'm not sure what kind of if she was having a procedure, if it was just a cleaning. Her mom called me and said, "Hey, we just had to leave the dentist's office. She was not cooperative, so we had to make another appointment. Do you think you can maybe talk to her and, give her some tips about how to be comfortable at the dentist?" Well, Ruby had recently been to the vet and had to have some stuff in his mouth looked at. So I asked the doctor, I said, "Can I take some pictures of you working with Ruby so I can show my kids at school that he goes to the dentist too?" And he's like, "Oh, absolutely." And so I got out my phone. We were looking at the pictures. And I said, Ruby was really scared before he had to go to the dentist too. But I told him, I said, they're not going to do anything that's going to make you hurt really bad. And if something does hurt, just tell them, hey, that hurts. I can feel that. And I said, then they can fix it. And I said, because they don't want to make your mouth hurt. They don't want to make you be in pain. That's not their goal. They're just wanting to help you fix whatever's going on inside your mouth. So we looked at pictures, and a couple of them, the vet has, his fingers in Ruby's mouth. And her mom, we talked about like when you go to the dentist, like you don't have to be afraid. And her mom called me back a couple weeks later and said that their next dentist visit went very well. And um, she told the dental hygienist that they have a dragon at school that also goes to the dentist.
wow.
That is
That
all. I love
that's
it.
I love those stories. Got some more?
um, wow. Um, I had a student the other day in my office, and she was very emotional, and to the point that like I couldn't understand her when she was talking. And I said, "Why don't we get Ruby out?" I said, "Sit on the bench so that way he can sit by you." And I said, "I'm going to give you a minute to just try to calm down so that way we can talk about what's going on." And Ruby walked over to her and put his front hands on her leg and looked up at her. And she goes, "Oh, Ruby's worried about me." And I said, "He is very worried about you." I said, "You never cry at school." I said, "So he knows something's wrong and we want to be able to fix it. So let's talk about it." And then we talked about what the problem was. Really, it was just like a misunderstanding. She thought she was in trouble. She was not in trouble. And so, like, we just could get things like that cleared up with Ruby's help. And it was just so, like, amazing to see how, like, he walked over. And I don't know if he noticed her crying, if it was like the noise she was making that was different that he's not used to. But he just put his little hands on her and just looked up, like, "Hey, what's wrong?"
Oh my God. No, I'm
I,
crying.
I, I, it's is it. Have you seen that behavior in Ruby before? Does he sense when? And I asked that question because we had a woman on that uses dogs in therapy, and the dog can actually sense when somebody needs attention. Have you seen that in Ruby before, or was this unique?
I feel like a lot of people would say, no, that's not a capability that Ruby has. He cannot recognize human emotions. But really, I do feel like he does know when it's time to be calm and when it's time to play. Because if I have a kid in my office and we're talking about something serious, he's never trying to get on the floor. He's not trying to run around. He just sits on the bench next to them, or he sits on the coffee table that I have in my office. And it's just like he knows, okay, now is not a time for me to run around or go anywhere. But there are other times when something fun is happening, like an assembly, that you can't keep that dragon out of an assembly. He loves them. He wants to be in there with the kids. And so during those times, he will run pretty fast and try to get into the gym where assemblies are held. One day I was covering the office. Our secretary had to leave. And so I was answering the phones, and Ruby was with me. And I didn't want him to go into the auditorium because I was not able to watch him during the assembly because I was answering the phone. And he would go under the desk to get to try to sneak out. He was between the desk and the wall trying to sneak out that way. It was just like he was trying to figure out any way of like, okay, she's not going to see me leave. And finally, one of the teachers noticed that he was trying to get out of the office, and she came and picked him up and took him in the gym and sat with him and the kids. And then he just sat there and listened.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's incredible. Like he sounds like a one of a kind. I mean, this is really incredible. What he, I mean, I'm fully convinced that he senses the energy and the emotions. I mean, animals of any kind, I think they do. They're in tune. That's part of their survival, right? They sense things that we don't sense. And but just so cool to see him do that with kids in a way that is transformational, really. I mean, that's like, yeah, it's we could sit here all day, Steve.
yeah. I was just thinking, these kids are gonna grow up and they go to high school, and they'll never forget this dragon. They'll never forget this ever. And I'll bet when they're 30 years old and brushing their teeth, they're still going to be thinking about Ruby, This is how I learned, I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah, I think
Well,
these,
and
oh, go ahead.
I really like Ruby in a sense. I mean, how many times have you asked your kids, "Hey, how was your day at school?" Fine, and then they walk away. Well, I think kids do go home and they'll say, "Hey, we did this with Ruby today," or "Ruby got to go to recess," or "I saw Ruby. Ruby came into our math lesson. Ruby came to our carpet time." Because anytime that I'm interacting with a parent, they'll always say, "Oh, you're the one that has Ruby." And I said, "Yeah, he's with me in my office." And they go, "Oh, we hear about Ruby all the time."
So
So I
what
know kids are going home and talking about him and talking about their day at school and the things that they did.
why do you think kids can relate so well to Ruby?
I think just like any other animal, like Ruby's not gonna make fun of them. He's not gonna call them names. He's not gonna judge them. I'll have kids that don't want to read something, and I'll say, "Well, why don't we go to my office and we'll read it there?" And they'll say, "Well, I'm not a good reader." And I say, "Well, Ruby's not a good listener, so you can both practice." And then they always laugh. And then we go to my office, they read, and I said, "Now remember, he's not a good listener. So if you read slow, that's totally fine because he's practicing listening."
That's awesome. You're a pretty phenomenal counselor.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here thinking if you were my daughter's counselor, I mean, Ruby does amazing things, but you're such a gift to these kids by being able to facilitate how Ruby can help and know what to say. And like you've tuned into Ruby, but also on a different level, tuned into how to help kids in a really incredible way that, man, it's like hit my heart. I have a 9-year-old, so I'm hearing all these things you're talking about, and we homeschool, and it's really incredible what you're doing and truly impacting. Like Steve said, these kids are going to tell their kids about Ruby when they're teaching their kids how to brush their teeth. I mean, it's gonna be like generational. Now, how long do bearded dragons live?
Their typical lifespan is, I've read 10 to 15 years. I've read 13 to 17 years, kind of different things. I do know someone that had a bearded dragon that lived to be 21. So, but I think it's, just like anything else, they can get cancer. They are prone to like beard aneurysms. And just like in a person, like that's not something that we can fix, and they do have to be put down. Um, so I hope Ruby retires with me. And that's why I do take him to the vet every year, at least for a checkup. If I feel like something's wrong, we go to the vet because I want him to be healthy and happy so that way we can keep going to school and being with kids and doing what we do.
So vets are, go to school to work on all animals, but bearded dragons are not really common as far as household pets, right? Maybe they are in some places. How did you find the right vet to work with Ruby?
Honestly, I just Googled exotic animal vet. I know that they do go to veterinary school for like large animal or small animal, but exotic animals, turtles, reptiles, snakes, those things are not included in that small animal training, or just very little. So they can add on an additional like time to get an additional certificate for like to be an exotic animal vet. And the vet that I do go to, he is an exotic animal vet. So he is very knowledgeable about different conditions that Ruby might have. So he can always reassure me that if I think there's a problem, um, no, it's okay. This is normal. Like I've seen this before. We'll do an antibiotic. It'll get better.
That's amazing. That's
Well, Brookli, again, to Robin's point, we could talk with you for, I don't know, 3 or 4 more hours, but I'm sure that you and Ruby have some adventure to go on. So want to thank you for being on. Robin, do you have any observations for us?
Man, just like you said, it's really incredible. So, Brookli, if you said Ruby has a Facebook page, how do people find Ruby? How do people support Ruby, or maybe, find out more about his adventures and connect with you?
Ruby's Facebook page is MT Ruby for Mark Twain Ruby.
Okay, awesome. So we will include that in the show notes as well. But if you're curious, I'm assuming I haven't seen his page, but I'm assuming it's Ruby in action, right? So
Yeah,
that'd be
I
really
have not been good this year on keeping up with his pictures.
uh, so but yeah,
So
if
I
you
will try to get better this week.
awesome. So yeah, if there's anything else you would like, viewers, listeners, this airs on YouTube and Spotify, so people will see and hear. They get to see Ruby. It's amazing that we got to see him in person. We got to see him on camera. Anything else you'd like people to know about Ruby or what you do?
Can you hold on just a second? My dog's barking. I don't know if you can hear him.
Yeah, we can. This is amazing.
I know. I'm in tears. Like you could see me. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh. This is
This
incredible.
is amazing.
Hmm. Like I said, we always keep setting the bar higher. This
Yeah.
is incredible. We're
Well,
just sitting here talking about you, Brooke. Like this is, I've been crying like through the whole, like this is incredible. We are
yeah,
so blown away
yeah.
by what you do and the work you do with Ruby, through Ruby. It's really a testament to you as a human and a counselor, and a gift to these kids that you probably, I'm sure but as a mom with a 9-year-old, beyond what you probably realize. So thank you from all moms and parents, dads, families of 9-year-olds out there. What a true gift you are giving to the world.
And
Well,
and
thank you.
I feel remiss as a co-host here. I didn't ask the star of the show, Ruby, to say anything. I really feel bad about that. Um,
He's
it,
very humble. He usually doesn't like to talk about himself.
But he
well,
sits there and looks pretty.
Yeah, but he knows his worth, and absolutely phenomenal stuff. If I had little children again, I would hope that they would be in an environment like you have created with Ruby, because it is so nurturing and affirming. So thank you very much. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for A View from the Summit. We'll be back next week. You've met the Dragon Lady today. I don't know how it gets much better than this, but it will. So we'll see you next week on another View from the Summit.
This program is made possible by Summit Animal Health. If you have a dog, cat, or horse with mobility issues, Summit Animal Health has the all-natural, drug-free solution that comes with a satisfaction guarantee. Summit Animal Health products are used by Olympic gold medal equestrians, leading rodeo stars, professional dog trainers and handlers, and people just like you. Whether working companion or couch potato, Summit Animal Health can keep them moving. Check them out online at summitanimals.com. New to Summit? Use the code VIEW15 and receive 15% off your initial order. We'll see you next week for another View from the Summit.